All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is, what are we in? We're now in March 15th. Welcome to the New Hampshire GEG live hangout. And this month we are focusing on how you and your students can tell their own story or your own story through the use of Blogger, or in any case, any sort of blog that blog platform that you want to use. So we have three other people that have joined our panel discussion this month. Jen Loughton says to say hello to everyone. Where she lives, they were hit pretty hard with the blizzard that we had yesterday, and having about 20 inches of snow, and their whole district closed, and just not a good time to be where she lives right now. So she says to say hi to everybody. But we have joining us today, we have Mary Murata, who's been on some of our hangouts before, a tech integrator in Massachusetts at Neshoba Regional. We have Kathy Wisey. We're glad that Kathy is joining us this month. Kathy, you're from, is it Timberland?
Yes, Timberlane Regional School District in Plastow.
Excellent. And are you at the high school or middle school? Or is it?
My office is at the high school, but I support the whole district.
Oh, you do? Awesome. Well, welcome. And then we have Karen, and I'm going to butcher your last name. I'm not even going to say it. What is it, Karen?
Desjardins.
Thank you. I was not going to say it that well. And Karen is what's your official title?
A media specialist at Londonderry High School.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, so we're all here this month just to share why we've started blogging, how you might want to look into sharing your own story or with your students, people that you might want to look at in terms of blogs that they've created. And Karen is also going to do a quick demonstration of, if you're interested, looking at how you can actually set up your first blog using Blogger. So without further ado, Mary, do you want to just quickly talk about how you started in terms of sharing your story with blogging?
So once upon a time, a very long time ago, maybe about 10 years ago, my high school was interested in deploying tablet PCs. And I started looking for schools in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, New England, that were using tablet PCs, and I couldn't find anyone. So I would Google tablet PCs in a high school. And I came up with an English teacher in New Jersey that was using tablet PCs and blogging about them. And sure enough, that person turned out to be Will Richardson, who I think many of us know that he's, a nationally renowned speaker in the area of conversations about technology. And I started following, this is before Twitter, so I started following how Will was actually publishing information and reflecting upon his best practices. And that really spearheaded my learning. I was able to kind of follow his lead. He was using blogs in the classroom. If I remember correctly, he was doing Secret Lives of Bees, and he had the author guest speak with his class. And although blogging has been around for a number of years, I still think it's a pretty powerful platform, whether you're bringing in guest presenters, or in my case, I use my blog primarily for reflection on my teaching practices.
Cool. It's amazing how small the world really is, with your story in terms of Will Richardson, and now he's this well-known person. Kathy, do you mind sharing about how you got started?
Sure. I used to work at New Windham High School, and we had Tech PLCs scheduled into our schedule. The first several years we were open, so I really got to spend a lot of time working with teachers. And after time, the schedule changed and they came to see me less often, so I needed a way to communicate with them very regularly and keep them up to date on stuff that I would see. So I started to blog at that point in time, and it took quite a while to get everybody in the loop of following it. But once they did, it turned out to be a really great communication medium because I could just put anything out there that I wanted to share and everybody would see it and then they'd share amongst themselves and comment and such. And so I've carried along the same thing over to Timberlane, and the blog that we run at Timberlane, the 3 tech integrators post to.
Oh, no. Oh, so all 3 of you have access to the same blog.
To the same blog, yes, exactly. Yeah.
So how did you convince people to start following your blog when you're at Wyndham? You said it was
I started by emailing them every Friday all the titles of all the posts that I had put out that week. And those were actually live links. So it took me a while to build the email and I got it down to a science, but that because we were very email oriented, that would really get them going. And then I eventually got them all to subscribe and get it in their email. And I could stop doing that. But we haven't succeeded as well at Timberlane, and we're trying to get people to use Google+, which I think is really the way that you want to share that information. And it works really well, but we're just having a slow time getting everybody to use Google+.
Sure. Cool. Karen, you're up. How did you get started?
So I started blogging really with a need to communicate with my students and the parents that were in my classes. So I kind of started with a different angle. And so I would post daily the agenda for the day, homework assignments, and then an image that would supplement whatever our content was. And this was in a humanities classroom, so English and a history team taught class for 11th grade. And so we would post our agenda for the day, major ideas, and a question, and then start to get students to engage with the content and comment on what we were doing for that day. It really was a great way to hold students accountable for work that they might have missed when they were absent. And this was all before Google Classroom and platforms like that. And then I moved on to blogging with those students because I saw that students were really capable of leaving great comments to the posts that I was giving them. And I said, well, let's try to have students actually blogging themselves. So I started with a fiction writing class, and we would read a piece of fiction. I would model how to write a post and what it might look like. And then I had students writing about the fiction they were reading. So I tried to have students really blogging and interacting and commenting on one another's blogs. And then I had another blog outside of that I was also trying to reflect on my practice daily. So I've used blogging in a couple of different ways just to meet the needs that I had at the time.
Cool. I'll share my little story too. I was introduced to blogging because of a professor that I had in a master's program, and her name actually happens to be Mary Murata, who's in this little program, our little hangout here. But it was more of along the lines of I did it because it was an assignment at that time, and it really never connected with me. And I felt like at that moment it was okay, this is extra. I'll admit I'm not someone who likes to read. I'm more of a numbers person. And at the time I was a math teacher, it just was something that this isn't for me. And then when I started to start teaching with Mary some graduate courses, I really saw this certain student that we had really pull and showcase her own blog and how she was actually sharing the cool things that she was doing in her classroom. And she teaches first grade. Her name's Nancy Maurice. Really great. She really got the idea of telling a story. And so it was a combination of, oh yeah, I remember that thing that this teacher of mine was telling me I needed to do. Then I really saw it into action. And that's when I was like, okay, so I feel as though I have some sort of story to tell. I really should be doing the same thing. And so that's how I got started. And my blog is more along the lines of kind of like Mary and Kathy, in terms of sharing information for other educators to help guide them along with best practices or tips and tricks and that kind of thing. But I'll admit it took me a while before probably 3 years before when I was first introduced to actually doing it. And now it's like, well, yeah, like why wouldn't people want to tell their story? I now get it. So I'll admit it took me a little bit, but I'm there. I am there, and I think everyone should be telling their story in some fashion. We all have something to share. So that's, I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything in terms of other things that have popped up just in the 4 of our little stories here.
We use it in our high school with particularly a lot of the English students, as if they're looking at a novel and they're writing and they're reflecting, and we make sure they're comfortable with the purpose of a blog. And I do feel that if students are publishing, whether it's a blogging tool or another tool for a live audience, I find they're more thoughtful about what they write before it's published. I'll also refer back to my own children. When graduating from college, one of them was looking to do some work at a company. And one of the first things they asked her was, so do you have an online presence? Like, do you have a blog, or do you have something talking about, I think it was at the time she was interested in yoga and health. And even though I had suggested she have like an online presence like that, she didn't have one. And I don't think it's until you go through the college process and you're actually interviewing for jobs that a lot of that aligns with what an employer might be looking for. What is your online presence? Not necessarily on Snapchat or Instagram, but what are you writing that you're publishing about, whether it's you're traveling or you're writing or what you're doing for work. So I think it's been an important tool as I've watched kids go through high school and college, and now my own children applying for jobs.
It's valid, very valid. All right, well then why don't we switch gears? And I do think sometimes students don't recognize that there can be this audience that let's, and teachers too, let's share the really great stuff that you're doing, because people do some really great stuff, and sometimes we don't get it until we accidentally stumble upon it. Oh, you did that in class the other day? Oh, that's really cool. But if you didn't actually meet up and interact, you probably would never know of that really cool lesson or that really cool activity that the students did. So that's actually a very good point.
Yeah, I think that you can also, if you look on Twitter as well, there's a hashtag comments for the number 4 kids, and people will tweet their class blogs with that hashtag, and they're looking for you to comment on their student blogs, which is kind of neat because people are really trying to work in that there is a global audience. And it is hard to establish that following, I think, but it's pretty neat. If you check out that hashtag, you can see what other student work is and then think, oh, wow, how can I get my students involved in that?
What was that again? What was the hashtag?
It's comments, so hashtag COMMENTS, the number 4. And then kids, KIDS. I checked it today. There are a couple of different teachers on there posting. I would say that often there are a good amount of elementary teachers who are on there with KidUblog, but you can occasionally get some really cool classes. Like there's a physics teacher on there and things like that. And they're looking for you to comment on their student blogs, and you can see student work. And how cool is it when that kid gets a comment from someone that they don't know? It makes their writing that much more authentic, like Mary said, and gives them an audience and makes them see that someone is paying attention.
Sure.
I think one of the things I forgot to mention earlier, so I'm a little on the older side in this crew, but blogging, maybe back 10 years ago, that was really our only platform to have our voices heard. But now what I'm finding is, obviously, Twitter is a microblog. So I find that the people that I used to follow on a blog, I'm now following on Twitter. But what I really appreciate is when they have anything substantial to say or they want to elaborate. I love how their Twitter feed is connected with the blog. So I noticed, Craig, a lot of things like if you're talking about what you're doing in the classroom, but you're limited to characters in Twitter. So I like the fact that if you give a link to your blog, like, oh, I didn't know that Bedford High School is doing that. Then what I'll do is go to your blog and get a more significant reflective post. And I then may share that then with other teachers in my building or somebody that I know that's looking to do something similar. And that could lead to a Google Hangout or a Skype or just me figuring out how to do something different with the staff in my high school.
And I'll quickly also mention that I've also noticed, you got me thinking, a lot of people will like create some sort of visual that relates to their blog. It can be done in Google Drawing. It can be done, you know, in a Google Doc, whatever. Take a screenshot of that, and that's what they use to tweet, but then it references their blog. I've noticed a lot more people are doing that. I haven't done that yet. Maybe that's something that I should, my next step. But to me, it does make things more visual, and it makes it a little more interesting of, I'll actually, I want to see what this is. It actually makes me want to click it. So
I think that almost leads back to, we've been doing Adobe Spark Post. So again, you can make a very attractive visual post with the link to your blog that talks about it. Or there are other tools that you can use as well. But I think you're right. We've been doing some of these book chats online. And instead of just getting text of questions, it's there, like with a slow Twitter chat with a link to a blog. So for me, I did a couple of those with our project-based learning last fall, leaning back to blogs. And that kind of fed PD within my building. So yeah, I found multiple uses for it.
Cool. So Karen, do you mind actually, maybe let's switch into gears of so if someone's never created a blog and they're interested in using Blogger, and why we're focusing on Blogger in this particular Hangout is it is tied to Google. And so if you have a school Google account, it lends itself very nicely that all you have to do is just log into that account. You're good to go. You don't have to create a separate account. And so Karen's going to walk through. So if you're interested, you want to start sharing your story, she's going to show you some of the quick nuts and bolts of that.
Yeah, so going off of what Craig said, some school districts will allow you to blog and some will not. I do think that's an important point to just mention. So if you find that you don't have access, maybe you want to talk to your district administrator and see if there's a reason why that's not available to you. I do know that currently I can't blog or use Blogger, but I can use it personally. And I do use it personally. So I'm showing you the personal end of things, but I think it's good to be wary and to just know that not everyone allows the whole, all of Google to be accessible. So let me just switch to my screen. So can you guys see my screen now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
There we go.
Right. Okay, cool.
Yep.
So if you're in a Google account and you come up here to the waffle, the 9 squares at the top, and you scroll down, and you can click on more, and you'll see Blogger right here if it's accessible to you, and it is for me right now. And this will bring me then into the dashboard or the back end of my blog. And you can see right here that I know I'm in Blogger. And then I opened a trial blog earlier today, but if I click on that trial blog, you'll notice that I have my categories: recent blogs, all blogs, deleted blogs. So just if you haven't ever created a blog, this will probably will be blank for you. And then you can just click on new blog and your screen will pop up like this. And it says create a new blog. So we're going to call this trial blog 1. And you can pick an address that you want to use. Try to really think about what you're using here, just because if you're going to look to gain some followers. You want your name to be appropriate, obviously. So I'm going to do Dijon trial blog. And then right here, you can pick your theme, but you don't have to stress out about this too much because you can always change this later. So I'm going to keep my theme on simple. And then I can just create my blog. And so now I am going to say no thanks to the Google domain right now. Unless, Craig, do you have better advice for that? Should we do the Google domain?
I never do. I always say no.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with no on that too. And so now, again, you're in your dashboard, and on the left-hand side is a nice navigation bar. Before we even create a post, you might want to consider looking at your settings. So on the left-hand side here, if you click settings, you'll notice this pops down a little bit with more of a menu. And the first thing that I often like to look at is language and formatting, because the time zone, since we're on the East Coast, it's always set to Pacific time. So I would encourage you to switch to Eastern time or whatever time zone you are in. Where is that? Eastern time. Check your date, your timestamp, the format, and then make sure you save your settings in the upper corner right here. Another thing that you might want to check, depending on who is using this, if you are using it to post your reflections and ideas, check up here at your posts and comments and sharing. This allows you to show how many posts you want per page, and whether you want people to comment or not. Do you want anyone to comment, only users with Google accounts, or maybe you want members to only comment? So you want to just think about who you want to comment, if anyone, but it's always good to share your ideas and then get some feedback. So,
and I think that's also another instance where you want to talk with your people who are responsible in your own districts about if there's any sort of policy or things that you can and can't do. That's another area of conversation, I think, just to tag on what you had mentioned earlier, Karen.
Right, absolutely, yep. And then you have comment moderation. So do you want to moderate the comments? Never, sometimes, always, and you can put stipulations on that. And then scroll down. Craig, do you want to elaborate on anything with this Google Plus comments or sharing with Google Plus?
I think if you're if kids are not of age, they're if they're under 13, they are not to click on that Google Plus icon, and they just use the blogger profile. And in fact, even at the high school, whenever I work with students, I always tell them, everyone just use the blogger side, and we can worry about Google Plus at another time. That would be an instance of not all districts have Google Plus turned on. So, having a blogger profile, I think, is the best case.
Okay. So once we're done there, just make sure you save those settings for now. And we can go back to theme. And so if you didn't like that simple theme that we chose initially, there are other colors that you can pick. And you'll notice, let's say we wanted it to be this red color. I've got my trial blog one. Oh, it doesn't look like I want this one. Oh, it brought me into customize. So I can go into customize and it brings me into kind of another layer, and I can pick different themes, and I could pick this red one. And then once I've changed it, if I'm happy with that, I could apply it to the blog, or I could continue to look at some different themes that are possible. If you don't like simple, dynamic views is another one, and you can scroll through all these. There's a lot of different choices for you. I'm going to go back to simple just for now, and I will also pick the red one for now.
Hey, Karen, sometimes what I do on that screen that you're on,
yeah,
I may click on the background one, and I have a neighborhood book club blog. And if I go to the background one and I click on the image, see where your red image is, where the down arrow is next to it?
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'll go in there and I'll pick something to be my background that's tied to like the theme. So I might do something under like food and drink, or something that's related, or health, and that sets my background. And everyone in my book club thinks I'm a genius, but basically I'm just changing the background of a blog to kind of go along with. And I usually do it by season. There's like a nice fall one. See the one with the leaves there? If you go over a little bit to the right. So like in September, I set it to like fall. So it kind of gives that nice theme of coming back to school. So I use the themes a lot for the background image as well. I don't know if you've used those.
I have. I like those a lot, actually, Mary. And I think that they can really help attract your readers. And if you ever did try to use this with students, they like to play with this part of it, right?
Yep.
The design part too. So, and that
Yes.
makes it fun for them and customizes it.
It's all about design.
It
All
is.
about design.
We've been talking a lot about design this month.
That's right.
The other thing I like is the adjust widths. When you click on this adjust widths right up here, you can play with this bar and make it wider if you wanted, or skinnier. I know that, you know, part of design, there's the different layout rules, but sometimes the different templates kind of make the text in the middle here, that the post text, really narrow. And so sometimes it's helpful to play with this right here. And then your right sidebar is going to be this area right here where I have this about me, and I can make that bigger or smaller as well. So there are quite a few things you can adjust here too, depending on what you are hoping your theme and your layout looks like.
Karen, do you mind showing us how to, if we want to make like how does someone actually like add a post?
Yeah, yep. So if we're happy with the themes in the background, we can apply that to the blog right up here. And then I should be able to, this is now kind of a lighter color. I'm going to go back to Blogger. And if I go to posts right here, I can then click new post. And it's, you know, a pretty typical layout for kind of just editing text. You want to make sure you have a post title. So reflections on, let's see, March 15th, we could call it. You might want something a little bit catchier than that. And I'm just going to make up something silly right now, right? We had lots of snow in New Hampshire. And so I could add a link if I had a hyperlink, maybe to a weather forecast, if I had an image. Again, this is pretty much a typical editing toolbar right here. And then I might want to put some labels on it just so that I can find my post later. You don't have to do this. It's a little bit advanced, but it can help your readers. And so I might do snow if I know I'm going to write about snow a lot. Or Mary talked about a book title. So let's say that I read, I think she mentioned The Secret Life of Bees. I could find this post more easily. You can also schedule your posts. It can just be automatic, and that's just that when you push publish up here, it's going to publish right away. Or you could set your date and time, and it's going to give you a time you could pick to publish it in a week and give the exact time. So if we publish this for now, I then see that my post is right here, and let's say I needed to elaborate on this post a little bit more, I could click edit, and it would bring me right back into that other screen. And then I would just want to say we had over 12 inches, update it, and then I might want to preview that blog, and right here you'll notice I can view my blog. It pops out another window, and there's my post. So pretty easy to do, pretty easy to use. Craig, do you want to add anything there?
Or Kathy or Mary, do you have any other tips that you tend to share with others or that you've discovered as you've actually blogged?
Yeah, so what I really like is what Karen showed, and inside that blog post, Karen, I like the fact that you can click the HTML button. So if you had, a Google slide presentation that you had published, or you had another like web-based tool that you wanted to include into your presentation, I love the fact that you can make that part of your post. If you got, your Twitter embed code or something from Pinterest, you can add all of that into a post or even into a gadget on the sidebar. And I think that makes the whole look of the blog, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe like a little bit more contemporary.
Yeah, I agree, Mary. Absolutely. It looks pretty good. Do you want to see how to do that, or are we good?
Sure.
No, I'm good. I just wanted to point it out to people that it could be done.
Right, right.
And I wanted to mention that I almost always try to include some kind of graphic. I think it just draws people's eyes in, and it just looks more appealing if it's something other than just text and a link. So sometimes I'll just do a screenshot and include that, or link to, do a quick image search for something that just is pertinent to jazz it up a little bit and draw their eye in.
Yeah, I think that's a very good comment, Kathy, because if it's not visually appealing, I tend to, if I open up something and I just see text, I'm like, I'm out of here. Let's move on. So yeah, that's actually a very good point.
Yeah, and I think that some of the best bloggers too that all of us follow also include amazing hyperlinks, right, to outside resources that they're using or other references, so that you can kind of read further. That's one of my favorite parts about blogs too, is that it's going to help me to learn more, not just outside that blog post.
Any other tips or tricks that you guys have in terms of things to think about in terms of when you're actually making a blog, adding a post? I think one thing that I wanted to mention is that you can actually add some pages in a blog as well. And I can show my screen here. All right, so do you see a blogger? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so right now I'm in my, so one of my blogs that I actually write to, I call it the Shield Spiel. And so this is what it looks like. But you'll notice up here, I actually have some pages, or some of them actually launch to a different website. So for instance, this one right here launches my actual Twitter feed. So if you're interested in having something beyond just one little home button here that just has all of your posts, when you get into Blogger, and you'll notice right here, this is where Karen was in terms of adding a new post. If I scroll down to pages, or maybe I'm not in the right place. Am I in the right place? I wanted to say it was here, but maybe I'm not. Am I making this up?
Nope, I think you're in the right place.
I thought you were in the right place too.
Looks a little different. Where's, so folks, I was gonna show you how I did it, but maybe I'm not in the right place. Is it back here? No.
So the way that when I've had to do it, when doing it from scratch, is I've had to add the new page and then drag it into the navigation piece the first time you do it.
Yeah, so like, okay, so I'll just say test page right here.
And it's not you, Craig. They have changed that a couple of times over the last couple of years. I got used to doing it a certain way, and then they went and changed it where it was a multi-step process.
Okay.
That you had to like add the page and then add it to the navigation bar, then went back and it was in the navigation bar. You could simply add a second page.
You're right. You're right. So, okay, so I added the page there, but okay, thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
What am I missing here? So you'll see right here, it says layout. So I'm now in the layout section. And so this is how my blog is being shown. Here are my posts. Here's that right sidebar that Karen was showing. about, I think, Karen, you had like about me kind of thing on the right-hand side.
Yeah, I think that was my default that just went in. I think the default might be an about me on
Okay.
whenever you create a blog.
Gotcha. Okay. And then you can add other gadgets, but up at the top here in this cross column, it looks like I added a gadget called Pages. So if I hit edit, this is where you'll actually see the different links. So I must have only had, now that I'm looking at this, you can tell I only added links. If I actually wanted to add, I can add another external link right here. And I can say, yes, turn on this test page subpage that I made. And so now that will show in conjunction with all of the hyperlinks to other external websites. So I think that's important to note, that you have that ability to incorporate those other features if you want to highlight other things beyond just here's a post for the day. Or if I'm even thinking in elementary, if a teacher wants to reference the school lunch, or they want to reference a website that they always use for their math practice, whatever it might be, that can be done right here by adding an external link. Other things that people have thought of?
I've always used in the blog, I like the fact that you can link in your Twitter feed, so that if somebody does come to your blog, they can see, you know, what you're posting on. But also, if you've had something that's, how do I say, not quite worthy of a blog post, but you wanted to tweet about it, to have your Twitter feed come up on your blog. So we, you know, my teachers do that with blogs or Google, well, the old Google sites. They incorporated their Twitter feed, so they like blending the two.
Do you mind showing that? I don't mean
No, sure, not at all.
Not necessarily like walking through the whole process, but do you mind showing more about the gadgets?
So let me just go get my blog and then try to share it with you.
And while Mary's doing that, anything else that people are thinking about?
Back to the images and sharing images in your blog, I do think that's important, but we also want to really think about where we're getting those images from, and that we're looking maybe on Creative Commons for those images and checking the licenses, or better yet is we're creating our own images, right? Taking pictures or creating some kind of artwork or things like that. We want to really consider where we're grabbing our content from and giving credit where credit's due if necessary. So images are great, but there's so many other lessons that we can incorporate in terms of digital citizenship and really thinking about our responsibility.
Good point.
That's perfect advice. Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay. So I just wanted to point out that when I go in as a teacher, especially in Massachusetts, we have teacher evaluation processes where you need to upload and provide evidence of what you've been working on in your classroom. So I like, if I do something like yesterday, I presented at a mentor meeting. So I might talk about that. I might give a link, but this is where I was talking about where I have my Twitter feed come in on the side page. And then a little while ago, I mentioned that if I did something with Adobe Spark, I can take that embed code, and under HTML, I can add it. So this will then link to my presentation that I gave in Adobe Spark.
Nice.
So those are some of the types of things that I may add in, or other little video clips onto my page. When I presented at Google Palooza, or I'm talking with kids about Instagram, I love the fact that I can link it right into my page. And then on a simpler note, can you still see my screen?
Yeah.
I do a neighborhood book club, and we used to send emails back and forth, like, what's the book? Does anyone know anything about it? Who was the author of the book? And 20 emails later, it seemed a little silly. So just once a month, we make a post. You know, what is the book that we're reading? When are we going to meet next? And we add that information. And if there's a YouTube video trailer, I plop it into the blog post. And as you can see, we've had a neighborhood book club going back to 2008. And Karen, you'll appreciate this. One of our library entries. We had an author come to our book clubs, but one of the criteria was you had to have a blog up and running for a minimum of 5 years.
Wow.
So yeah, so we actually had the author come and, you know, just having the blog, and these are just some of the fun things too. Like we have a Pinterest board about book clubs, or as a librarian, I know they have the library thing where you can go in and you can just select your book cover and it makes a badge on your blog. So, you know, we've tried to make it fun and informative. And a lot of times people will say, what did you read last year? And I have that blank stare. But if I go back and look, I can go back and pick all the past books that we've read. So for me, it's a great way to just go back and look at materials that we've read. Or like Craig said, I've also put tabs here. So other people have recommended books. A lot of people in my neighborhood are now listening to audiobooks. So we're talking about that. And every once in a while, someone brings a recipe to book club. And we post that in our book club as well. So I try to get students and teachers to embrace technology in their personal life and then kind of connect that back to how you would use it in school.
Mary, do you mind just showing where people get the gadgets? So not necessarily like walking through the whole process, but if you want to be able to get a Twitter in there, or you want to be able to put an image on the side, can you just quickly show where to find that?
Sure. And again, all these run nicely on your mobile device as well, too. So I think when I do that, I go into layout. And then when I'm under layout, you have the ability to add a gadget. So the gadget that I added to get my Twitter feed is an HTML JavaScript gadget. So when I go and look for it, if I click on add a gadget, you're testing me, Craig. I haven't done this in a little
No,
while.
you're good.
But
You're
it's
good.
this, that's okay. It's this one right here. It's add the HTML one. So this is the one I tend to use the most. And then what you have to do is that you then have to go to your Twitter account, excuse me, and then it will give you the code to paste in. So I'll say, follow me on Twitter. I paste that HTML code that came from my Twitter account.
Nice.
And then once that information is added, I can like change the order of these too by dragging and dropping. So if my archives aren't important, or you can have feeds come in from other places, and then you click save arrangement, and you can view your post. And if you notice, it's pausing right here. Sometimes it takes a minute or two to load in those
Cool.
those feeds.
Thank you.
But that
Yeah,
should
and
load in any minute.
Mary does a really great job having all different types of blog to kind of tell the story of different parts of her life, which is pretty neat. I know that, Mary, there's another gadget where you can add a list of your blogs. So it would be kind of neat, you know, to link to all of the different blogs you have as well, to show, again, what are your different interests, and highlight that you're writing for a variety of reasons, and all of the different parts of your life that help to tell the story of who you are.
And sometimes they're all separate. Sometimes I have a school one, and then I have a neighborhood book club one, and our family's done a lot of traveling in the last few years. And my kids will ask me, well, where are we going? What's the hotel and what's the flight? And so I think I'm still sharing. So I'm going to show how I did a travel blog. So we went to Ireland a few years ago, and all I did was basically map our itinerary, what we were doing. And then I just basically linked to every place that we visited. And surprisingly, my kids will come back and say, oh, someone asked me when we went to Ireland, where did we stay when we were near Cliffs of Moher? And then I've just basically come in here and I've hyperlinked a lot of that so we could go back and reference it. And I made a Pinterest board. So it's kind of fun to look at of the different travel boards of where I want to go. So
Cool.
it's, again, in my professional life, my personal life, it's just a way for me, more so than for anyone else, it's for me, so I can keep track of all the different things going on in my life.
Cool. Now, Kathy, you had some recommendations in terms of like how to actually like share the information besides email, and I think it's important to chat about that real quick. Do you mind talking about that?
I use a tool called Deliver It, that it's at deliverit.com, that you can use to push your blog post to. We use it to push to Twitter, but you can use it to push to a lot of different social media. So we have a Twitter feed, but all the blog posts automatically go to that. And it just makes it really easy, so you don't have to manually post to multiple places. And I do find as time goes on, people have different preferences for different tools, and you really need to spread your message out to multiple tools. And that, yeah, using a tool like that just really helps. And it was free. I just, logged in, set up an account, and I had to provide the login and, to the other accounts, and it worked really fine. So I just think it's really helpful. Yeah.
Does that tie in with like Google Plus as well? I know you had mentioned that earlier.
A blog post, if you're on Google Plus, it automatically comes up and says, do you want to share this on Google Plus? And I always do. And you also have the opportunity to put an extra comment on there. So if your Google Plus circle it's pertinent, you could add a comment even above and beyond what you posted in the blog.
Nice. And I even think, especially in our New Hampshire GEG, we have a community. So if you're on Google Plus and you just search, it might be GEG space New Hampshire, and a community will show up. And even if people just share their stories and things that they discover in that community as well, I think is another great way of letting other people know what you're doing in your own districts and with your own kids. And so Deliver, and that was deliver.it, is that correct?
It comes through as dlvr.it, but to set it up, it's deliverit.com. Okay. So dlvrit.com.
Excellent. And I know that we have, and maybe I should quickly showcase my screen in terms of what we have we put together a little list of people that you might want to follow or take a look at. And so I'll share the screen, but maybe people can actually chat about why they follow the said person. So if you give me 1 second here. All right.
Okay, just one thing that I wanted to bring up. Yep. I think a great way for administration in a school, you could have a principal, a couple of assistant principals share an admin blog and then link that off of your building website. Because sometimes our building websites can be rather difficult to manage or navigate or post a message, but you can link your blog off of it. And I think that's a great way for news to get out. And then directly from within the blog, depending upon which template you have picked, you can also tweet it out.
Good point. Yeah, I know some school districts do that, where like every day someone else posts or weekly. It's a great point. So does anyone want to chat about some of the people that they put in this little list here? By the way, the link to this Google Doc is right here. The Google shortener /v capital H 7 P E capital L.
Sure, I can talk about a couple of the people that are on there. So you'll see Catlin Tucker. She's one of the top ones. She is an English teacher in California, and she has some amazing ideas on just a lot of different parts of the classroom, incorporating hyperdocs. Just how do you manage a classroom with various devices? So she can really give some good tips and tricks. I learned about preferences from her in a Google Doc, and providing really great formative feedback in an efficient manner. So she's not only English oriented, her ideas apply across so many disciplines. Catlin Tucker presented at MassQ, I think a year ago, and she was pretty good. Carrie Gallagher, she is a Massachusetts teacher. She's a history teacher, and you can read about her story of going paperless in her classroom. And she, again, talks about tips and tricks, shares some of her student work, and kind of also shares some of her pitfalls at that time. And now she's moved on to being a tech integrator. So she shares her experiences now doing that. And I'm not sure, who's the last one I posted?
Doug Johnson.
Doug Johnson. He has amazing voice and he's funny to read. He'll talk about his interactions in the library, with tech integrators, with administrators, and he's a pretty funny guy. Overall, his blog is called the Blue Skunk Blog. So I shared 3 different blogs there. I think 2 of them are hosted by Blogger and one might be a WordPress. So WordPress is another, blogging platform that a lot of people use. I know we're showcasing Blogger, but I thought I'd just mention that.
Cool. And there was also on that list Richard Bryan. He tends to be one that posts things almost, I don't know, 5 times a week, different things to think about or tools or tricks. Alice Keeler tends to do a lot with Google Scripts and just showcasing workflow. And so my question, and I know what everyone's going to say, how do you actually find people to people to follow on blog? That's like a common question that I hear sometimes. So I don't know if anyone wants to address that.
Twitter. You can, like Mary said earlier, Twitter is like a micro blog, and a lot of people will share the title of their post, and then you can click on it and see what they're talking about, what their latest posts are, and see if they interest you. And so, after a while, you can tell whether or not it's a person that would help contribute to your ideas or maybe help you to rethink some of your ideas, which is always good too, to find opposing viewpoints. So Twitter is probably one of the best places to find some different people to follow.
I think you raise a good point about conferences. So I do remember seeing Caitlin Tucker present at MassQ a few years ago. And based on her presentation, I enjoyed her presentation that she gave, the examples, and I started following her based on that. So, and I just went, while we're talking, I just went and looked online, and, Caitlin has an interest in project-based learning, which is something we're doing in our school. So I might retweet her resources. I also follow people like the Buck Institute of Education that focuses on project-based learning. And we did that in our school this year. And as we focused on project-based learning, we got involved with following them on Twitter. They started following us, retweeting us. We get involved in some of their slow chats. So there are organizations that it's great to follow if you're trying to adopt some of their teaching strategies and get examples from them. We're doing that right now with, like I said, BIE, the launch book. So there's lots of great educators out there to follow, whether it's on Twitter or their blog, or it links back to a website.
Cool. Kathy, how do you find the people that you follow with Blogger or with blogging?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination. It's generally been both workshops and Twitter. And lots of times somebody, especially on Twitter, you will find somebody following, somebody will retweet something and you'll go and check them out. If somebody retweets something particularly pertinent, I have found lots of good sources through that. It gets hard because I can only follow so many, so yeah. But that's mostly what I tend to do, and Google Plus tends to be a little bit different than either of those. So I will use that too, in the communities in there, and that will lead me to certain blogs that are more topic based.
Cool. Well, I want to be cognizant of time here. We have 4 minutes left of our little hangout here. But I think word of advice for those that have not blogged, don't feel like you're going to blog every day, because it's not going to happen. I think for me, I have like one of my goals is blog at least twice a month. And sometimes that's even hard because I want to be thoughtful. I want to make sure it's great content. And so it's okay if you're not blogging every day because you'll get to some blogs and you're like, wow, you know, that they're able to do it and that works for them. But if you've never done it before, it's okay if you're not out there every day sharing your story. But to have that, figure out what that story is. And if you're doing it with students, again, just check in with your own policies in your district, see what you can, what you can't do. And, you know, with younger grades, maybe it's I know some teachers in the elementary, the teacher will create a blog account, you know, to have the blog live in their account, and students participate while whether it's in a group conversation or it's done in a Google Doc, and you can copy and paste that in, say who it was written with the first name. So blogging can be done whether it's K to 12 and beyond. And I think it's, I want to reiterate what Mary said is this is just one way by which we can help promote positive online presence, especially for those seniors who are leaving the high school and they are going on their own. What better way to say, here's evidence of my learning or my story so far in my 18 years. So with that, unless anyone else has anything else they want to add, I will add one other piece that Hampton at Winnicott High School on April 1st, they are hosting an apps events, and that is a one-day Google admin boot camp. So if you're in a district and you want to know more about how to deal with the admin side of Google, definitely check that out. It's a one-day event on April 1st. But unless anyone else has anything else they want to share, I'll pause. I want to thank Mary, Kathy, and Karen for joining us today. And stay tuned next month to see what our topic is going to be. I think actually it might, no, I won't. I'll leave it as a surprise. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, Craig.